Hey everyone, wanted to show off my Pelican Catch 120. Did a lot of work on it this year and show you the modifications I made on it. Went to Harbor Freight, bought a trailer. Thing ended up getting too heavy to drag down to the water. Every now and then I go to a couple places where they didn't have a boat launch, so I got the cart here, strapped that cart on and can drag it down on wheels and get it down to the water. But other than that, I was just taking it to the boat launch and dumping it in the water at the boat launch. I guess first thing here, we'll start at the front. I opted not to go for the anchor trolley. I ran my anchor rope right through the front handle. Anchor rope goes down here, ties onto the cleat. The rope's up underneath my seat. Right next to me, I untie it, drop the anchor. When I'm done, pull it up. It's worked out really well, been real happy with it. Added navigation lights to the front and the rear. You'll see the rear when we get back there. You'll notice the boat's registered because I put a motor on it. In New York, you put a motor on a kayak and you got to register it. We have a Lowrance fish finder. Ran the cables down inside the hull. Down inside the hull, you can see the transducer is mounted as a through hull. Up top here, I've got a circuit breaker for the Minn Kota motor, and I just put my batteries down in here. I've got the Minn Kota, I got a big battery. If I'm running the Honda, I just put a small battery, just enough to operate the fish finder. I've got a couple of Scotty rod mounts there. Got the Scotty lake troller downrigger. Works great, especially on something this small. Moving to the back here, I just put this on just to show you. I put a Scotty mount there, and that's a camera mount that I modified to anchor the control to. That's the Enduramax. I opened the thing up. I was hoping I could take the electronics out of it and mount the electronics up inside the hull. As it turns out, the electronics on these things is poured into that cast aluminum housing, so you can't separate them. So when I do use the Minn Kota, I just put it on like this so the throttle control is right next to me. I don't need to go anywhere, and then the motor clips on. When we get back there, I'll show you the motor mount. It's the same mount for the Honda and the Minn Kota, but that works really good. I did not pin this in place. There's a pin that goes through up in here to hold it into place, but so I just slid it on for now. But hold there where it pins into place. I like the belt inflatable life preservers. It's just not cumbersome at all. Actually, I spin the thing around the back and it gives me a little lumbar support while I'm sitting. About a month ago, I went out fishing up on Lake Ontario and ended up rolling the kayak, and I'd seen videos of how to get back into the kayak, and I have to tell you from personal experience, it is not nearly as easy as they make it look on those videos. When I did finally get everything righted back up, the inside of the kayak was full of water. It was unstable. It was certainly a learning experience. I can't say it was all bad. I ended up, how you get rid of all the water in it, sit on top. Once it's full of water, it's so unstable, you can't really crawl up there to the front or back hatch to try to pump it out. So I ended up putting this fitting in, and got a cap plug in there, and then underneath my seat here is a sump pump, and it's a perfect fit. There we go. Perfect fit down in there. Get back here so you can see it a little easier. And right from where I can sit, right from sitting, I don't have to get up. I can stand there and pump, and it comes out of the water comes out of that hole with such force it just shoots it over the side. I don't need a hose or anything. And so I can pump the inside out got a hose attached to the bottom of that fitting, goes right down into the lowest point at that point anyways. Gets the most of the water out of there. Real happy with it. Moving up here, got one of these, found this at Home Depot. Just a convenient place to put all these leashes. I got a leash for my fish ruler, got one for the rag I use, I got one for my one that I put on my paddles, and one for the cap that goes in, that plugs up the sump pump hole there, whatever you want to call that fitting. Put that cap on there just because I don't want it open to the bottom where I can somehow be getting water in it. But the other thing that happened, being so hard getting up on top of this thing, I got to thinking about it, and I looked up, I saw some, I don't remember, they call them kayak self-rescue ladders or something, but came with something that I think is going to work a little better. And pull this thing out of here, got a couple of loops in it. This thing's all just tied right now, but so if this thing's flipped upside down or right side up, either way, you just undo this thing, throw it over to the other side, and the loops are low enough down there. You get your feet into it, you reach up here, you grab, if this is upside down, you got one foot in, you stand up and you pull up, and that'll flip your kayak back over right. Throw the thing back over the other side again the way it's sitting right now. Put your foot in there, grab a hold of this, and don't pull up, but pull sideways to help pull yourself up into it. Makes it a whole lot easier, especially for old fat people like me. Moving on towards the back here, I put a 4-inch hatch in here. Got a dry bag, little storage. I also put these hatches in so I can run wires and run the paracord that I use for the motor steering. Give me some access to run that stuff. Black rod here is my throttle control for the motor. On back here, this motor had a tiller handle on it. Put this down. The motor had a tiller handle on it. Took the tiller handle off. I mounted the throttle control on this Scotty mount here. And then I got a piece of flexible conduit right here with stainless steel hose clamps clamped onto it. And then I've got it pinned so I can just take it apart. And then this runs right up next to me on the right side of my seat. And that's how I control the throttle, as you can see. It gets me where I need to go. In the back here, I put an 8-inch hatch. Got a dry bag in it. And then I had these here. I had this here engineered and made. Just a prototype. I think there's a couple things I can do to try to make them a little more cost effective. At least the way they were designed right now ended up being more money than I expected it to be, but that paracord runs down through there, up through the hull, and comes up here and ties onto the motor. Works great. Paracord comes up, comes out through the hull there, attaches onto an eye bolt underneath the foot pedals. Foot pedal here. So when I pull, or I should say when I push with my foot, the motor turns. And took it out, works great. I will say one thing I did learn is that the scupper plugs, if you're going to put a motor on your boat, anything more than a Minn Kota, you need to put the scupper plugs in. It doesn't lift the front end of the boat up very much, but it brings it up just enough that when you're going, it's pushing water through the scupper holes. Keep the scupper plugs in there and you won't have that because the top side of your kayak starts to fill with water. When you stop, it drains back out, but it's, I don't know, more of a nuisance to me. Going around the back side here, the rear, here's the rear navigation lights. The leash for the motor, it's the automatic. You know, I got it clipped onto my belt loop. If I fall off, it shuts the motor off automatically. I have the clip here, it's clipped right onto the motor, and I just have some paracord goes down through my bracket there. I can't take that motor off with this thing clipped, so there's no way I can possibly lose this in the water. The motor mount, I use aluminum angle iron here and here, and then from the edge you can see I use some flat aluminum plate and some 1-inch square aluminum tubing, and either pop riveted or use stainless screws to screw things together, you know, depending on what's where. On the bottom side, inside of this, there's a solid piece of aluminum, you know, there and there, so it's not going to pull through. And this thing is just incredibly sturdy. When I flipped this thing, I couldn't get back up onto the kayak. What I ended up doing was swimming around to the back of the kayak. I took the motor, I flipped the motor up horizontally like that, and I ended up standing on the shaft of the motor to get up onto the bottom of the kayak. There's a lot of leverage there. Old fat guy like me, 235 pounds, that much weight standing on that motor, didn't bend that bracket, just didn't do anything, didn't do any damage. You know, just real happy with it. It turns out I can take that Honda motor on and off in a matter of 2 minutes and put it away, change it out for the Minn Kota. This winter's project is, I ran the Minn Kota cables over the top for this year when I used the Minn Kota motor, but this winter I'm going to put a plug in here, so when I put the Minn Kota motor on, I can just plug it in. My controls here, when I mount the controls, I'm going to put plugs in here and here. One plug goes up to the battery, and the other plug will go back to the motor. The steering is the same, runs through those same cables. They clip right onto the Minn Kota that I have, and so the plugs will make it real easy. The other thing I forgot to show you is that I, underneath on the front and in the back, I put epoxy on the keel as a keel guard. Go around and show you in the back. That way, at the beginning when I was dragging this thing across the grass, if I hit some stones or whatever, it wouldn't tear the bottom up. Not a very good picture on the back, but there was a couple places that I went fishing, and I ended up having to drag this thing. I didn't have the wheels yet, and had to drag it, and I ended up crossing a couple of sidewalks, and that epoxy held up. I mean, the epoxy took a beating, there's no doubt about it, but the hull, it didn't damage the hull at all. The end of the season, I tore all the old epoxy off and re-epoxied it. It'll be great again for next year. Just a real, I went to Home Depot, I think it was 15 bucks for the big tube of it. It's a 2-part Loctite, I believe it was. Again, I couldn't have been more happy, and that rolled keel guard that they sell online, just a lot of money. And but that's that, and I guess we get these things here redesigned, and maybe we'll do another video on those, and if anybody's interested, make it where they're affordable, where you can get the things. The other thing that I am looking at is putting some outriggers on this thing, but I want some functional outriggers. I'm looking at outrigger that'll double as a live well or a cooler, and that kind of move. They'll move up next to me where I can pull them in and they spring back out when in use. So that's it.